Human helps alien girl escape a collapsing outpost, only to realize she's hiding a forbidden map. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, back to the main character. The rumble of a collapsing building filled the air, dust and debris swirling in the dim, flickering light of the emergency generators. Alex Turner, a young but experienced rescue worker, sprinted through the narrow hallways of the outpost, his breath coming in sharp gasps as the structure groaned under the strain of imminent collapse. He didn't know how much time they had left, but it wasn't much. The floor beneath his boots trembled, and the lights overhead sparked and buzzed in an erratic pattern. This place was going down, fast. But it wasn't the building or the danger of the collapsing outpost that kept Alex moving, it was the girl he was trying to save. Zira, an alien from a distant world, had been stranded here, left behind by those who were supposed to protect her. Her people, a race of tall, slender beings with glowing green skin, had once been a proud and powerful force in the galaxy. Now, all she had was him. He had been told it would be a routine rescue mission. But as Alex burst through a door to find her, he realized how wrong that assumption had been. Zira stood by the window, looking out over the desolate landscape of the alien planet, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and determination. She was tall, even for her species, with emerald-colored skin that shimmered in the dim light. Her long, silvery hair cascaded down her back like a waterfall of starlight. She turned as Alex entered, her piercing eyes meeting his for the first time. "You're here," she said, her voice a soft melody, but filled with a cold, distant sadness. "I didn't think anyone would come for me." Alex didn't have time for pleasantries. "We need to go, now. The whole place is about to fall apart." He reached out to help her, but she recoiled slightly, her eyes narrowing with suspicion. "I'm not leaving," she said firmly, her voice soft but resolute. "Not until I've done what I came here for." Alex frowned, confusion crossing his face. "What do you mean?" "This place is going down, Zira. We don't have time for anything else." She turned away from him, walking toward a table cluttered with papers and strange artifacts. She quickly picked up an old, worn map, folding it carefully before hiding it in the folds of her tunic. "This map," she began, her voice low and heavy with the weight of secrets, "is why I'm here. It's a map to something forbidden. Something that could change everything." Alex blinked, trying to process her words. Forbidden map? Change everything? He didn't have time for this. They needed to escape, and fast. "Zira, we don't have time for this," Alex said urgently. "We need to go now or we'll both die here." She turned to face him, her eyes meeting his with a sudden intensity. "You don't understand. If this map falls into the wrong hands, everything will be destroyed. You won't be able to save anyone, not even yourself." Alex was taken aback. He had never seen such determination in her eyes before. She was willing to risk everything to protect whatever this map represented. He swallowed hard, trying to shake off the feeling of dread that was settling in his gut. "What is this map, Zira?" he asked quietly. She hesitated for a moment, then shook her head. "I can't tell you. Not yet. But you need to trust me." Alex stared at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. She was right. They didn't have much time. He grabbed her hand, pulling her toward the exit, but the building was already starting to collapse around them. Dust poured through the cracks in the walls, and the air was thick with smoke. "Come on!" Alex shouted, pulling her along as they ran toward the escape hatch. Just as they reached the door, a loud crash echoed through the outpost, and the ground beneath their feet cracked open. The two of them stumbled, barely keeping their balance as the world around them began to crumble. Alex grabbed her arm, pulling her back into the hall, his heart pounding in his chest. They were running out of time. But Zira wasn't just running from the collapse of the outpost. She was running from something much bigger, something that would change the fate of not just her people, but the entire galaxy. Alex pulled Zira through the crumbling outpost, his heart racing as the ground trembled beneath them. They had to move fast, but every step felt like it might be their last. The corridor ahead was filled with dust and smoke, and the lights flickered erratically, casting eerie shadows across the walls. Alex's mind was focused on one thing, getting them out alive. But there was something else gnawing at him, the forbidden map Zira had hidden in her tunic. What was it? What could be so important that she would risk everything to protect it? They reached a locked door at the end of the hallway, the only exit left. Alex tried the handle, but it wouldn't budge. "We need to hurry," Zira said, her voice urgent. "The map, it's more dangerous than you think. If we don't get out now, we'll never make it." "Then tell me what it is," Alex said, pulling at the door again, frustration rising. "I can't," Zira replied softly. "I wish I could, but it's too dangerous. There are people who will stop at nothing to get it." She glanced over her shoulder, her golden eyes scanning the smoke-filled hallway. "We have to leave, now." Alex looked at her, confusion and concern written across his face. He knew she wasn't lying. There was something in her voice, something in her eyes, that made him believe her. "Okay," he said, finally relenting. "But we're not done talking about this." With one last effort, Alex slammed his shoulder against the door, and it finally gave way. The hatch opened to the outside, where the wind howled through the barren landscape, and the sound of the outpost's collapse grew louder. Without another word, Alex grabbed her hand, pulling her through the door and out into the open. They ran across the rocky terrain, the weight of the situation pressing down on them with every step. The outpost was now a crumbling wreck behind them, but ahead, the vast alien desert stretched out, endless and unforgiving. The sky above them was a strange shade of purple, and the air felt thin and cold. They had barely made it 10 yards when the ground beneath their feet trembled again. And a series of explosions echoed in the distance. Alex's instincts kicked in. He pulled Zira closer to him, shielding her with his body as debris rained down around them. "We're not safe here," Alex said, his voice low but urgent. "We need to move. Now." Zira nodded, her face pale but resolute. "I know a place," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos. "It's not far, but we need to get there quickly." Without waiting for a response, she began to lead the way, her movements quick and purposeful. Alex followed, his mind racing. Zira had been hiding something from him, something more than just the map. The way she had spoken about it, the way she had acted, it wasn't just fear. It was desperation. As they continued across the desert, the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows on the cracked earth. Zira glanced up at him, her eyes full of unspoken words. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For trusting me." Alex looked at her, his gaze softening. "I don't know what's going on, but I'm here to help," he said, his voice calm and reassuring. "Just tell me what we're running from, and I'll do whatever it takes to protect you." She didn't answer right away. Instead, she kept walking, her pace quickening as they neared a rocky outcrop in the distance. "You'll find out soon enough," she said finally, her voice tinged with a strange sadness. "But for now, we just need to survive. We can't let anyone find us." The last rays of sunlight faded from the sky, and the world around them was plunged into darkness. Alex glanced at Zira, his resolve hardening. Whatever it was they were running from, he was determined to keep her safe. They had made it this far together, and he wouldn't let anything tear them apart now. They moved quickly through the desert, the darkening sky above them casting long, eerie shadows over the barren landscape. Zira led the way, her pace steady and determined, while Alex followed closely behind, his senses alert to every sound around them. The air was cool now, but the harsh winds of the planet still whipped at their faces, carrying the faint scent of sulfur and dust. The crumbled outpost had been left far behind, but the weight of what they had narrowly escaped still lingered in Alex's mind. He kept glancing at Zira, wondering what it was about this map, this forbidden thing, that was worth risking everything. We're almost there, Zira said, breaking the silence. Her voice was calm, but Alex could hear the underlying tension in it. Where exactly are we going? Alex asked, trying to keep his voice steady. A hidden place, she replied. It's safe for now, but only for a short while. Once the map is revealed, everything will change. Her words hung in the air between them like an unspoken promise. Alex didn't know whether to believe her or not. He still didn't fully understand the significance of the map, but he knew one thing for sure: Zira was running from something much bigger than just the collapse of the outpost. They finally reached the base of a rocky hill, where Zira stopped and turned to face him. This is it, she said, her voice low. She gestured to the entrance of a narrow cave, almost hidden among the rocks. Inside, it's safe. But once we go in, there's no turning back. Alex hesitated for a moment, then nodded. He had already come this far, and there was no way he was leaving Zira alone now. Let's go, he said, his voice firm. As they entered the cave, the temperature dropped significantly. It was dark inside, but Zira's eyes seemed to glow with an inner light, guiding their way through the narrow passage. The air smelled damp, and the ground beneath their feet was uneven, but Alex stayed close behind her, trying to ignore the feeling of uncertainty that kept creeping up on him. After what felt like an eternity of walking, they reached a small chamber deep within the cave. The walls were lined with strange symbols, glowing faintly in the dim light. Zira knelt beside a stone pedestal in the center of the room, and Alex could see her hands trembling as she reached for a hidden compartment in the floor. This is where it all begins, Zira said softly, her voice filled with reverence. She opened the compartment and pulled out a small, intricately carved box. Alex could feel the weight of the moment, the tension in the air thickening as Zira opened the box. Inside, carefully folded, was a map, ancient and worn, with strange markings and symbols that Alex couldn't understand. This map, Zira said, her voice filled with both awe and fear, holds the key to something that could change everything. If it falls into the wrong hands, the galaxy could be plunged into chaos. That's why I've been hiding it, why I had to keep it safe. Alex looked at the map, then back at her, still unsure of what he was truly getting involved in. Who's after it? He asked. Zira hesitated, then looked him in the eye. The Dominion. They've been hunting me for years, trying to force me to reveal its secrets. They'll stop at nothing to get it. Alex's stomach sank as the full weight of the situation hit him. He had no idea how deep he had gotten into this, but one thing was certain, he couldn't back out now. What happens next? He asked, his voice steady but filled with determination. Now we wait, Zira replied. But we don't have much time. They'll find us soon, and when they do, we'll have to be ready. The sound of footsteps echoed faintly outside the cave, and Alex's heart raced. It was clear that Zira was right, things were only just beginning, and he had no idea what they were about to face together. The air in the cave was thick with tension as Alex and Zira waited in the dim light, the strange symbols on the walls casting eerie shadows. Zira sat cross-legged on the ground, her hands gently holding the map, her golden eyes fixed on the intricate details of the markings. Alex stood a few paces away, trying to calm his racing thoughts. The reality of the situation was settling in. They were on the run, and they had no idea how long they could stay hidden. The Dominion was after Zira, and with the map now in their possession, it was only a matter of time before they would come looking. Zira's voice broke the silence, soft but filled with conviction. We can't stay here for long. The Dominion's reach is vast. They'll know we're close before long. Alex nodded, his brow furrowed in concern. So, what do we do now? Zira's eyes met his, and for a moment, Alex saw a flicker of vulnerability in her expression. Now we move, she said quietly. But we have to be careful. There are places where the map can lead us, hidden places where no one will think to look. We just have to get there before they catch up. And how do we do that? Alex asked, his voice steady despite the fear that had begun to creep into his chest. Zira stood up and walked to a nearby rock, her fingers brushing over the symbols carved into the stone. We follow the map. But we'll need help, people who can keep us hidden, people who know how to stay off the Dominion's radar. And you think you know where to find them? Alex asked, still trying to piece everything together. Zira gave him a brief nod. Yes, but it won't be easy. We'll have to cross several systems, travel through uncharted space, and avoid the Dominion's patrols. We won't have much time before they catch wind of us. Alex glanced back at the entrance of the cave. The wind was picking up outside, and he could hear the distant hum of engines. His instincts told him they were being hunted. The question was, how long before the Dominion found them? We can't waste any time, Alex said, his voice sharp with urgency. We need to go now. Zira turned and walked toward the back of the cave, where she had left her equipment. She began gathering what little they would need for the journey, some food, a few tools, and the map, carefully folded and hidden once more. Alex joined her, his mind already calculating their next move. They had no ship, no allies, and no clear plan, but one thing was certain, they couldn't stay here. As Zira finished packing, she turned to Alex, her expression unreadable. Are you ready? She asked. Alex met her gaze and nodded. I didn't come this far just to give up now. Zira smiled, though there was a sadness in her eyes. Good. Then let's go. They stepped out of the cave into the cold night, the stars above them shining brightly in the clear sky. The vastness of the universe stretched out before them, but in that moment, Alex only saw one thing, the road ahead. The map was their guide, but it was also their curse. It held the key to everything, and now that it was in their hands, there was no turning back. As they made their way toward their next destination, the sound of engines grew louder in the distance. The Dominion was getting closer. And they would stop at nothing. To get what Zira was hiding. Alex's grip tightened on his pack, his heart pounding in his chest. He didn't know where this journey would take them, or what dangers lay ahead, but one thing was certain, he wasn't going to let Zira face it alone. Together, they would have to outrun the past, face the unknown, and uncover the secrets of the Forbidden Map before it was too late. The night was cold and silent as Alex and Zira moved through the barren landscape, the stars above them a silent witness to their journey. They walked at a steady pace, careful not to make any noise that might attract unwanted attention. The Dominion was out there, somewhere, hunting them. Every sound, every shadow felt like a threat, and the longer they moved without finding shelter, the more the weight of their situation pressed down on them. Zira led the way, her sharp eyes scanning the horizon for any signs of danger. Alex stayed close, his mind constantly racing. He had never imagined his life would take such a turn. A simple rescue mission had turned into a high-stakes chase across the galaxy with no way to predict what would happen next. How much farther? Alex asked, his voice low. Not far, Zira replied, her voice calm but filled with a quiet urgency. We're close to a hidden base where we can regroup. We'll be safe there for a while. Alex nodded, though he wasn't entirely sure if he believed her. Safe was a relative term in their situation. There was no place in the galaxy that felt truly safe when the Dominion was hunting you. They continued walking in silence, the crunch of their boots the only sound breaking the stillness of the night. Zira's mind, however, was elsewhere. She kept thinking about the map. What it meant. What it could mean for the galaxy. She had spent years hiding it, keeping it safe from those who would use its power for their own ends. Now, it was in Alex's hands. She had never intended for him to get involved. She had never wanted to put him in danger. But now, it was too late. Why are you helping me? Zira asked suddenly, breaking the silence. Alex looked at her, surprised by the question. You know why, he said, though he wasn't sure if he did. He had never expected any of this. It wasn't as if he had a deep connection to Zira, or even understood what was going on. But something about her made him want to protect her. Something in the way she carried herself, so determined, so strong despite everything she had been through, made him want to stand by her side. Zira paused for a moment, then met his gaze. I don't deserve your help, she said quietly. I've lied to you, kept you in the dark about everything. You don't owe me anything. Alex shook his head. You're wrong, he said. You've saved me more than once already. You've got your reasons, and I'm not going to judge you for them. But right now, we're in this together. I'm not going to leave you. Zira's expression softened, a flicker of something like gratitude in her eyes. She wasn't used to having someone stand by her. She had always been alone, always been the one people used and discarded. But here, now, with Alex, it was different. She didn't have to fight alone anymore. As they continued their journey, the sounds of the desert began to grow louder. The wind picked up, whistling through the jagged rocks. In the distance, the faint outline of a hidden base began to take shape. We're almost there, Zira said, her voice steadier now. Alex nodded, but his mind kept drifting back to the map. What could it really lead to? What would it mean for them? And for the galaxy? As they reached the base, Zira stopped and turned to him. This is it, she said. We'll be safe here for now. But we can't stay for long. They'll find us eventually. We need to keep moving, keep running, until we can find a way to stop them. Alex looked at her, feeling the weight of the journey ahead. There was no going back now. The map, the Dominion, their lives, they were all connected, and the road ahead would be far from easy. But whatever came next, they would face it together. The base was smaller than Alex had expected, hidden within the rocky crags of a distant valley. The structure itself seemed ancient, built with materials Alex didn't recognize, but it was strong enough to provide temporary shelter from the Dominion search. Zira led the way inside, and Alex followed close behind, his senses alert to every movement. Around him, the interior of the base was dim, lit by low, flickering lights that cast long shadows on the walls. It was quiet, too quiet. As they moved deeper into the compound, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Zira stopped at the entrance to a small chamber, turning to face him. We should rest here for now, she said, her voice steady but still carrying the weight of the tension they had both been carrying for days. But we can't stay long. We need to keep moving. Alex nodded, his eyes scanning the room. The walls were lined with shelves of strange artifacts, some of which Alex couldn't even begin to identify. It was clear this place had been abandoned for a long time, but the remnants of its former use were still visible. Zira motioned for him to follow her as she walked to a desk in the far corner of the room. She began to pull out a few maps and documents from a drawer, spreading them across the table. These are the locations marked on the map, she said, her fingers tracing over the faded lines. If we can get to any of these places, we might have a chance to hide. But we need to be careful. Alex walked over, studying the map closely. It was clear that Zira had been to some of these places before. The lines on the paper were worn, as though they had been handled countless times. But there was more than just the map. As he looked over the documents Zira had spread out, he saw references to the Dominion, to military movements, and something that caught his eye, a reference to an ancient artifact. What's this? Alex asked, pointing to the line of text. Zira looked up from the map, her expression serious. That's part of what I'm trying to protect, she said, her voice tight. It's not just the map. There's an artifact linked to it, something far more powerful than anything the Dominion has ever encountered. Alex felt a chill run down his spine. And you think the Dominion is after this artifact? Zira nodded. They're already searching for it. They think the map will lead them to it. That's why I've kept it hidden for so long. But now that you're involved. She paused, her eyes flicking to the door as though she expected someone to burst in at any moment. Now that we're involved, there's no turning back. We either stop them or the galaxy is at risk. Alex absorbed her words, the gravity of the situation sinking in. This wasn't just about running anymore. It wasn't just about escaping the Dominion's reach. The map and the artifact, whatever they were, could change everything. He looked at Zira, her face tense with determination, and realized that, despite everything, he trusted her. So, what's the next step? He asked, his voice steady. Zira glanced over the map again, her fingers brushing lightly over the symbols. "We need to get to the coordinates here," she said, pointing to a distant star system marked in red. "It's the last place anyone would look. But it's also the most dangerous." Alex didn't hesitate. "Let's go." Zira gave him a small, appreciative nod, but the worry in her eyes remained. "It won't be easy," she said. "The Dominion's forces are relentless. They'll be hunting us every step of the way. But if we don't go now, we'll lose our chance." Alex's mind raced as he thought about their next move. There were too many unknowns, but one thing was clear: they were about to face the biggest challenge of their lives. As Zira gathered the documents and rolled up the map, Alex kept his eyes on the exit. They needed to leave before the Dominion found them, before they were too late. They had no time to waste. The race had begun. The cold, harsh wind of the alien planet howled outside the hidden base as Alex and Zira prepared for their journey. Zira was already packing the last of their supplies, her movements quick but deliberate. The map, still safely hidden in her tunic, was their only hope now. Alex stood near the entrance, his eyes scanning the barren landscape beyond, a feeling of unease creeping over him. They had spent days here, in this old, forgotten base, but their time was running out. The Dominion would find them soon. They had to leave now if they had any hope of reaching the coordinates that Zira had marked on the map. "Are you ready?" Zira's voice broke through his thoughts. Alex turned to face her, his mind racing but his expression steady. "Yeah. Let's go," he said, walking over to her. She nodded, her face hard. With determination, but there was a trace of something softer in her eyes, gratitude, maybe, or trust. He couldn't quite tell, but it was there. "We can't afford to be seen," Zira said, checking their surroundings one last time before leading the way. "We'll take the long route through the caverns to avoid the Dominion's patrols. It'll be dangerous, but it's the only way to stay off their radar." Alex followed closely behind, his hand resting on the small weapon he had taken from the base. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. The cavern system they were about to enter was a maze of tunnels, winding and narrow, and it would take them several hours to traverse. But the alternative, walking straight into Dominion patrols, was too risky. "I don't know what we're walking into," Alex said, his voice low. "But I'm with you." Zira glanced back at him, her eyes briefly meeting his. "I know," she said softly. "I'm glad you're here." They continued in silence, the sound of their footsteps echoing in the tunnels as they descended into the depths. The air grew colder, the walls closing in around them. It felt as if the entire planet was pressing down on them, its weight heavy and suffocating. The further they went, the more Alex felt the isolation. It was just the two of them now, alone in a dark, forgotten place, with the fate of the galaxy hanging in the balance. Hours passed before they reached an area where the tunnels opened up into a vast underground chamber. The air was still, almost suffocating, but it offered them a brief respite. Zira stopped, looking around cautiously. "We need to rest for a moment," she said, her voice tense. Alex agreed. They sat on the ground, the cold stone beneath them unforgiving. Zira took the map from her tunic and spread it out between them. "We're here," she said, pointing to a location marked in red. "This is where we'll find help." Alex leaned in, studying the map closely. "Who are these people?" "The ones you're counting on to help us." Zira hesitated for a moment, then looked up at him. "They're a group of exiles, former members of the Dominion who defected. They've been hiding for years, staying under the radar. They have resources, but they're not easy to find." "And you think they'll help us?" Alex asked. Still unsure. Zira nodded. "They'll have to. If they don't, we're dead. The Dominion will find us, and we won't be able to outrun them." Alex took a deep breath, processing her words. "Then let's find them." Zira packed the map away again, her expression determined. "We need to move fast," she said, standing up. "The longer we stay here, the more dangerous it gets. We'll rest later." They set off again, the sound of their footsteps the only noise in the oppressive silence. The cavern seemed to stretch on forever, and with each step, Alex's anxiety grew. They were deep in enemy territory now, and the further they went, the closer they came to their unknown future. But one thing was certain, they had come too far to turn back. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. The further Alex and Zira ventured into the cavern, the more oppressive the silence became. The only sound was the faint echo of their footsteps, the air thick with the dust of ages. The stone walls around them felt like they were closing in, the darkness pressing against them like an invisible weight. Despite the cold, Alex could feel the sweat gathering at the back of his neck, the tension in his muscles growing with each step. He glanced at Zira, who was walking ahead, her pace steady but her eyes darting around with caution. She had been leading them through the labyrinth of tunnels for hours, but now, as they moved deeper into the unknown, Alex could sense that she was becoming more and more on edge. "How much farther?" he asked, his voice breaking the stillness. Zira paused, her head tilting slightly as she listened to the silence around them. "Not much farther," she replied, though there was a trace of uncertainty in her voice. "We'll be there soon." Alex couldn't help but notice the way she kept looking over her shoulder, as though expecting someone to appear from the shadows. It was obvious that she was worried, but what about? They had been careful to avoid any Dominion patrols, staying hidden in the tunnels, but Alex couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. "Are you sure we're not being followed?" he asked, his hand instinctively reaching for the small weapon he had kept close. Zira met his gaze, her expression serious but calm. "I'm sure. We've covered our tracks. But the further we go, the more likely it is that we'll be detected. We can't waste any more time." She turned and started walking again, her movements precise and purposeful. Alex followed her, though his mind was racing. He had always been good at reading people, and something about the way Zira was acting made him uneasy. She was hiding something from him, he could feel it. But what? They reached the end of the narrow passage and came to a large, open cavern. The ceiling above them seemed to stretch endlessly, and the dim light from their small hand-held torches barely illuminated the edges of the space. In the center of the cavern stood a large, ancient-looking structure. It was difficult to tell what it was, perhaps a relic from an old civilization or a remnant of something far older. "This is it," Zira said quietly, her voice barely a whisper in the vast space. "The entrance to the hidden base." Alex took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. He had expected something more, something with more security, more people. But this was nothing like what he had imagined. It looked abandoned, deserted even. "Are you sure this is the right place?" he asked. Zira nodded. "Yes. The people here are exiles, but they can help us. They'll know what to do." She moved forward, approaching the structure with a quiet determination. Alex followed, still unsure. They had come this far, but everything felt too uncertain now. What if this was a trap? What if they were walking into an ambush? He could feel his doubts creeping up on him, but he pushed them aside. This was their best chance. They had no other option. As Zira approached the entrance to the structure, she stopped and turned to face him. "Stay close," she said. "And don't make a sound." Alex gave her a quick nod, his hand tightening on the weapon at his side. He didn't like it, but he trusted her. Together, they walked into the dark, ancient structure, the silence wrapping around them like a cloak. Inside, the air was cold and stale, and the walls were lined with strange symbols and markings. It felt as though they had stepped into another world, a place that had been lost to time. They moved deeper into the heart of the structure, the sound of their footsteps muffled by the thick dust that covered the floor. Zira paused in front of a wall, her fingers tracing the markings as she whispered something under her breath. Alex couldn't understand the words, but he knew they were important. The markings seemed to glow faintly under her touch, and with a low rumble, the wall shifted, revealing a hidden passage. Zira turned to him, her eyes bright with purpose. "This way," she said, leading him into the darkness once again. Alex followed, his heart racing as they entered the unknown. The Dominion was still out there, and every step they took brought them closer to whatever was waiting at the end of this journey. But whatever it was, he was in it with Zira now. And together, they would face whatever came next. The hidden passage seemed to stretch on forever, the darkness surrounding them like a suffocating blanket. Alex kept close to Zira, each step they took echoing through the silence of the ancient structure. The air was cold and musty, and every corner they turned only revealed more unmarked stone walls. The faint glow from the markings on the walls faded as they moved further in, leaving them to rely on the dim light of their flashlights. Zira moved ahead, her every step precise, as if she knew exactly where she was going. Alex followed, feeling the weight of the situation press down on him. His thoughts raced. What had they walked into? They were so far underground now, in a place that seemed lost to time. It felt as though they were stepping deeper into the unknown. How much farther? Alex asked, his voice breaking the silence. Zira glanced over her shoulder, her eyes narrowing in the dim light. Not much, she replied. We're almost there. Just stay close. Alex nodded but couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. There was an unsettling quiet to this place, an ancient stillness that made his skin crawl. As they turned another corner, Zira stopped in front of a large stone door. It was unlike anything Alex had seen before, intricately carved with symbols he didn't recognize. There was no handle, no keyhole, just a smooth, polished surface that seemed almost alive, as though the door itself was part of the rock. Zira stepped forward, her fingers tracing the symbols gently, her lips moving in a quiet chant that Alex couldn't understand. The door rumbled softly, and Alex stepped back, his heart pounding. Slowly, it began to shift, moving inward as though it had been waiting for Zira to unlock it. With a final creak, the door opened wide, revealing a large chamber beyond. The walls were lined with rows upon rows of strange artifacts, all glowing faintly in the darkness. In the center of the room stood an enormous pedestal, and upon it rested a small, ornate box. Zira stepped into the room, her eyes locked on the box, a mixture of reverence and fear in her gaze. This is it, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Alex followed her, his senses on high alert. He couldn't help but feel that they had crossed some invisible line, stepping into a place that was meant to remain hidden forever. Zira reached out and carefully lifted the box from its pedestal, cradling it in her hands as though it were the most precious thing in the universe. This is what they're after, she said, her voice tinged with an emotion Alex couldn't quite place. She opened the box slowly, revealing a small, intricately carved object inside. It was a pendant, glowing softly with a light that seemed to pulse in rhythm with Zira's breathing. This is the key, Zira whispered. The Dominion believes the map will lead them to the power they crave. But this pendant, she trailed off, her fingers gently brushing the pendant's surface. This is what they need to unlock it. Alex stared at the pendant, his mind racing. It was beautiful, but there was something unsettling about it. Something that told him this was more than just a relic, it was something far more dangerous. What is it? He asked, his voice low. What does it do? Zira closed the box, her face hardening. It's a relic of an ancient civilization, she said. One that the Dominion has been hunting for centuries. They believe it can give them control over the galaxy. Alex's mind spun. The Dominion? Control over the galaxy? It was almost too much to comprehend. But Zira's serious expression told him she wasn't exaggerating. And you're the only one who can stop them, he asked, his voice quiet. Zira nodded, her eyes locking with his. I'm the only one who knows how to use it. And if they get their hands on it, she trailed off, her face clouded with worry. Then everything we know will change. Forever. Alex swallowed hard, the weight of her words sinking in. He had followed her into this journey without fully understanding what he was getting into, but now it was all too clear. The stakes were higher than he had imagined, and they were running out of time. We need to move, Zira said, closing the box and securing it under her tunic once more. The Dominion will come for it, and they will stop at nothing to get what they want. We can't let them find us here. Alex nodded, his mind still processing everything, but one thing was certain, he wasn't leaving Zira's side. Together, they would have to face whatever came next. And whatever it was, it would be a battle for the future of the galaxy.